Welcome to Creative Spirit Gathering. I am your host, Reverend Jen Hutchins, and this is your space for exploring and expressing what is on your mind and your heart in an art journal format. Today, we're going to be exploring the theme of positive and negative shapes, and I will be talking a little bit about this particular page that I made back in 2010. Sometimes I just love flipping back to my old journals and seeing how these same themes, these same ideas have been relevant and keep showing up, in different times and places. It's a lovely way of just remembering that these are like timeless activities that we are doing that we can lean back into at any point in our lives and lean into them to deepen our own spiritual practice and to lean into our own hopes and dreams. That's really what our art journal becomes about. It's this dialogue between ourselves and our dreams, our higher selves, our inner spirit, that one powered by whatever name you call it. So I want to share with you an image, and this image contains shapes because we are talking about shapes this month. And I want you to think about when this image pops up, what is the first shape you see? If you want to hold that in your own mind, that's fine. If you want to type it into chat, you could do that as well. It's not necessarily a deep soul revealing thing. So get ready. Here it comes. What is the first shape you see? Is the first shape you see? Seeing some things pop up here. For some of you, right, we might also notice the color of the shape. If you're noticing the black outlines as outlines on the edges, you might be seeing faces. Face might be the first thing that popped forward for you, silhouettes. If you notice the white area first, you might have seen a vase. And now that you've heard both, or some sort of water fountain-y shape in the center there, now that you've seen or heard both, see if you can notice the other one, right? If one popped out for you immediately, see if looking at the shapes now, if you can notice the other one, either the faces or the vase here. You may have seen something like this before. It's a common sort of optical illusion, but what the artist is really playing with here is the idea of positive and negative shapes. Positive shape is the object itself, the figure that we're trying to convey in a work of art. So in this particular case, if the positive shape is the faces, right? The artist is trying to get you to see a face. Now here, they're purposely playing with this, but if the positive shape is the face, then that white space becomes your negative shape. It's the space that's created, sort of the leftover space, if you will, that's created on your figure ground relationship within your canvas, your paper, your art journal page, wherever that is. So the positive is sort of the image, the figure itself, and then the negative space is the space around it. Now, I want to share with you another image. This one makes it a little bit easier, right? We've got this figure with a microphone, and then you can see what is the yellow in this image is definitely the negative space. So the positive space being the figure, the yellow being the negative space. Now, we in our culture right now, like we've sort of created definitions rather around positive and negative that might have a judgment value. And I want you to kind of set that aside. That's not what we're talking about here. The yellow is not like a bad thing. It is the opposite of the black space. It's what creates the whole. If like me, you've got a teenager, you might be looking at algebra right now. And it's about balancing equations, right? It's like what's on one side, what's on the other creates a balance. It creates a whole, or puzzle pieces, if you will. So we have positive shape and negative shape. And what's really interesting is that with the positive, negative shapes, with that awareness, we start to notice artwork differently. We start to notice our relationships, even to our surroundings differently, right? Look at what's right in front of you. Look at the objects themselves around you. Got a bunch of stuff in front of me. And now look at the space that's created between the objects. Now, in the artwork itself, right, we call this negative space, but it's not empty space. It's anything but. All of these things around us, right, we know there's still air between those spaces. We know that there's all sorts of particles and dust and who knows what between them. There's vibrations and light energy between the spaces. So the negative spaces are not empty spaces. It's not void, but it plays an important part of the whole. So when we're looking at artwork, we're looking at both the positive shape, the image, the figure, right? These little birds here become my positive shapes. And the circles become positive shapes. And then this space around it becomes that negative space. Oh, the relation, even this little space right here, this curve between the bird's head and this little circle. This becomes an interesting little space that we could almost imagine, you know, like what is the relationship in there? What does that space feel like? What is the purpose of that space? What is the tension created by that space? In the earlier images that I showed you, right, I intentionally created really flat two-dimensional images that were silhouette images. So you have this stark contrast between the figure and the negative space, that positive negative space. Here you can see, right, my negative space has color, it has a pattern to it. So negative space isn't always going to be like blank on your canvas, but we're just looking at that differentiation between the positive or the figure, kind of that figure-gram relationship we were talking about in an earlier session, and then that background, that negative space around it. So why is it important in art? It's important in art because with an awareness of the fact that anytime you put anything down on a piece of paper, not only are you instantly creating shape, like we talked about last week, but you're also creating positive shape and negative shape. There's like this instantaneous thing that happens when something goes down. Even if it's just a simple circle on a page, you have two things that are now happening, two different shapes happening. And you can use that to create balance on the page, you know, by dividing it equally, a figure on one side and lots of empty space on the other. You can use it to create tension on the page, right? A figure that comes right close to the edge, but there's just this little bit of negative space on the very edge. You could use it to create a frame, which sort of happens here. With the knowledge of these tools, we can intentionally create artwork that reflects what's coming up for us and how we're wanting to express onto the page. What's awesome about art journaling is that we can use it to explore and express our inner lives as well. So it's not just about, you know, recreating, oh, I see an easel back here, so I'm going to draw an easel on the page and notice the negative space around the easel, but I can draw or create, or in this case, collage, ideas that are coming up for me. This particular piece, again, you'll notice there's these birds. As I get a little closer, you can see that they are collage cutouts. So they were just made with like scrap paper, pair of scissors, super easy. Most of us had that on hand, and some glue. And I often go to glue sticks when I'm working in my art journal. They're really easy to work with. And again, simply creating space was really the intention here, that there was some sort of figure, and then I used the space, the negative space behind it. You can see there's sort of two divisions here because I was writing out two different ideas. So you might not have two. This happened to be, again, I was just pulling something from my way back journals to share with you that this idea is still relevant. And I used probably, I don't know if it shows up at all, but I used a green marker on the green and a red marker on the red. You can maybe see some variation in the text there. Again, a conscious choice because I didn't want that negative space, that background area to become overly busy, right? I wanted that sense of sort of calm and peace within that. But it was exploring those spaces around the birds, around the figures that gave me a place to rest on the page. And when we rest on the page, we're giving ourselves space to rest in our lives. How many of you could use a little rest, relaxation, presencing, moving into flow? And the arts, creative expression, especially process arts like we do in our journal, can give us that space to really tap in to that place of rest. It becomes almost like we're stepping ourselves into the negative space of life. Instead of being so focused on this activity and that activity and, you know, my physical being walking in this world, what about the space around all of it? What about the space between my dreams and where I am in expressing them? What about the space between this challenge and conflict that I see over here and my true nature, right? That space, if I could walk in between that, into that place of calm and peace and tap into that peace through creative flow, would a solution exist in that space? We never know what will turn up. I had a situation yesterday where something came up. I was working on a project and all of a sudden I hit this big like, oh no moment. I was just like, oh, that's not the result I was looking for kind of moment. And I walked away. Like I was like, I can take a moment to step back from this. And I went for a walk just around the neighborhood, enjoyed the spring day. And in that walk, about 30 minutes in, there was all of a sudden, I was like, I should check this. I should go back and check this thing. And came back, and you know what? It wasn't that thing. But when I went to check that one thing that I thought about, something else popped up. Something else came into my awareness that totally solved the problem. And I was like, okay. And it took me like 10 minutes to fix it. But it took me 10 minutes plus a walk, right? If I didn't step into that space, that negative space away from, right, between my problem and the solution, and step into that space, that answer wouldn't have been there, right? I might have spent like the next hour trying to find this thing. And this happens so much in our lives that we get so caught in the figure, the drama, the whatever it is, that we forget about all these spaces around it that provide opportunities for us to rest. If we think about those spaces of stillness, there's opportunities to lean into meditation, to lean into your spiritual practice, whatever that is. And in those spaces around things, we find so many hidden gems. Before we move into our meditation today, I want to share with you, this is from Effectual Prayer by Frances Folks. Effectual Prayer. And she talks about this place of stillness. And so I'm thinking of this in between, this space in between the figures as this stillness. She writes, "It is in such stillness, such waiting before the Creator, that the tiny sapling gathers the strength to become the mighty oak. For strength is for all creation. It is here that the flowers find their glorious colors and beautiful forms, for the beauty that the Creator possesses is for all. It is here that trees blossom and blossoms fruit and form and ripen. It is here that the green of nature finds its clothing, for all things find their being in silence." So as we lean into our being, we're going to lean into a moment of silence, into a moment of meditation. And then afterwards, I invite you to move right to your journal to just explore what's coming up for you with the idea of positive and negative space. It may be that you want to focus on one or the other, focus on an idea, right? It doesn't have to be, again, that you like recreate the image itself, but something that represents an idea, a figure, a relationship, or to focus on that negative space, focus on the stillness, focus on the silence. See what happens when you weave into both, because it is that merging of the positive and the negative that creates the whole of our art and the whole of our life. Let us take this now into a time of meditation. Take a deep breath, sigh it out if it feels good, if it feels comfortable to you. Another deep cleansing breath. Release. We are here. We are present to this now moment, the gifts that it brings. With each breath, we allow ourselves to relax more fully. First, we notice the muscles of the body relax, noticing the tension in the shoulders drop, noticing our arms and hands get heavy, just resting where they are. Notice any muscles of the legs that have been contracting to just soften. And as the body fully relaxes, we allow ourselves to soften and relax anything in our mind, any thoughts and ideas that are wandering in there. Just invite them to take a moment to rest from their busy, busy activity. With each breath, we invite the mind to relax. And in this space of relaxation, we create space, greater space of stillness, of peace, of awareness of the truth of our very being. It's a radiant expression of divine love. We rest in this silence, grateful, open, and aware. What gifts does the silence have to offer you today? What gifts of presence do you wish to explore? We listen and trust that inner voice. We let it guide us, continuing our meditation as we move into creative expression, moving into the flow. This moment to breathe into the stillness and the silence. We say, thank you, Spirit. As we gently wiggle our fingers and toes and flutter our eyes open, I invite you now to move into your journal process, exploring, expressing those positive and negative shapes that make up the whole of you right now. That's how it is. Enjoy your process.